an impeachment trial of Donald Trump. Congressman, good morning. Thank you for being with us. We're bouncing back and forth between a number of urgent issues, and as urgent as the crumbling of a bridge or a road is in America, so too is this erosion of voting rights. The other day, you tweeted about your Democratic colleague, Congressman Hank Johnson's arrest at a voting rights protest on Capitol Hill, reminiscent of the civil rights movement, reminiscent of John Lewis's work. Give me your estimation of how this new civil rights, voting rights movement is moving, and how we inject this level of urgency into the discussion.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. We are at a very critical moment in our democracy. There are efforts underway in 47 state legislatures to make it more difficult for people to vote, particularly communities of color and other marginalized communities. It's the most sacred responsibility we have as citizens of this democracy, is to be sure that we express our views during times of voting. And the only remedy to that is to enact H.R. 1, S1 to protect voting rights all across this country. And the thing standing in the way of that is the filibuster, this sort of Jim Crow relic. The irony that this fundamentally undemocratic device would be used to crush the most pro-democracy piece of legislation in a generation is kind of cruel irony. But look, whatever way they do it, the Senate has to move forward on S1 and H.R. 1 so we can protect voting rights all across this country. I think you can easily carve out an area of democracy, voting rights, and civil rights, particularly when you look at the history of the filibuster and how it has been used to prevent progress on civil rights. This is a perfect carve-out. I think we should get rid of it completely, but for those that are reluctant to do it, for sure, we ought to be more interested in protecting our democracy than protecting this Jim Crow relic called the filibuster.
You tweeted the other day about the fact that Kevin McCarthy had named a few people that he wanted put on the January 6th investigation committee. Speaker Pelosi came back and said, no, you got a few people who voted against the certification of the election who are just going to, make trouble. You tweeted that you're glad that they don't have big lie spreaders on the committee. But let's talk about how this thing goes forward, because it's supposed to start with its hearings this coming week. Does it proceed with no Republicans on it except for Liz Cheney? Or do we think that Kevin McCarthy puts forward another batch of names?
Well, I think we don't know what Kevin McCarthy is going to do, but we know for sure the Speaker has appointed a now bipartisan committee that will have a quorum to begin hearings this week. This is an ongoing effort to ensure that we get all of the facts surrounding this bloody attack on our democracy that left 5 people dead, including 1 Capitol Police officer, the most, kind of serious attack on our democracy since the War of 1812. And look, we tried to do this in an independent national commission. The Republicans refused. Kevin McCarthy then made some appointments that made it clear he's not serious, and he wants to turn this into a circus, people who have been promoting the big lie. If you look at Jim Banks' statement after he was appointed or recommended by McCarthy, it was disqualifying what he said in that statement. Look, we are determined to get all of the facts surrounding January 6th, what led up to it, who paid for it, who organized it, to make sure this never happens again in this country. This was a day where the peaceful transfer of power occurs, the meeting of the Electoral College. This is an effort by insurrectionists to overthrow the government of the United States, to stop that peaceful transition of power. We have to take it seriously. This is an effort that was conducted by some of the worst domestic terrorist groups in this country, and we just can't sort of let it go. We have a responsibility to make sure we do everything necessary to hold everyone accountable who was involved in this, and to make sure it never happens again in America.
Congressman, I want to ask you, as I was talking to Senator Casey about the infrastructure bill, we may see something very soon, this week perhaps. It may come back to Congress. Nancy Pelosi has said that if they're not satisfied, if you're not satisfied with what happens in the Senate, you may have to reevaluate things in Congress. And you've got different sides in the Democratic Party about how big this should be, how big the compromises with Republicans should be to get this passed. Where do you stand on hard infrastructure versus this much, much larger bill that includes human infrastructure, if you will?
Look, I think Democrats are very much united in making sure we do 2 things. One is pass an infrastructure bill that addresses our roads, our bridges, our ports, our schools, our transit systems, but also pass the American Jobs Plan, the American Families Plan, that also is about making sure people can get back into the workforce. Early childhood education, affordable child care, community colleges, all the things, community-based care, all the things that are often impediments to getting back into the workforce. It's about supporting working families. And Democrats are united. We want to be as bold and big as we can to respond to the economic crisis we face. We want to rebuild the infrastructure of our country so we can compete with other countries around the world. We once had the best infrastructure in the world. That's no longer the case. This is about America competing successfully and about investing in working families. And we're going to get both of those things done with or without our Republican colleagues.
Congressman, good to see you this morning. Thank you for joining us. Democratic Congressman David Cicilline of Rhode Island. All right, we're going to take